Hello, this is Jordan. This video is being recorded on Thursday, March 31st, 2022. Thank you so much for joining me today. Make sure you subscribe and leave a comment. I'd really appreciate it. I'm going to have a lot more videos and interviews coming over the weeks ahead. Thank you. And today is an important day for technical analysts because it's the end of the month and the end of the quarter. So that means we can look at monthly and quarterly charts. And I'm going to discuss those, my observations. There's not that many, but I do have a few. That's going to be the subject of today's video. But first, maybe I should discuss the Will Smith situation. No, I'm just kidding. I don't want to discuss that. I want to talk about charts and gold and silver. So let's get to it. First off, quarterly charts. And this is something I've been talking about over the last year or so, how $1,900 is and was the significant resistance level for gold on the quarterly charts. It also was on the monthly chart. But so we put in a close at 1954. That's a clear breakout. And this is a really good sign for gold. I mean, quarterly charts, obviously this is, I mean, you could look at yearly charts, but I mean, that aside, quarterly charts is really the longest long-term time frame you could look at. So gold closing well above 1900 on the quarterly chart, making a new all-time quarterly high. That's a signal that ultimately we are very likely to see that on the monthly, weekly, and daily charts. So it's a good omen for the market overall. And so we can see silver closed at 25. And what's interesting about the silver quarterly chart is right around 27.5 or $27. That's a really, really significant level for silver. It's been really stiff resistance. If you look, silver has tested 27 in 6 of the last 7 quarters. So, one thing you can see, silver closed, it traded almost up to 27.50 this quarter. That was several weeks ago. Closed at 25.13. So it was a little disappointing. You can see that candle. We would have liked to see a higher close for silver. Same thing for gold. We would have liked to see a close, a quarterly close that captured most of the gain. And looking at the candle for gold, I mean, maybe it closed a little bit. It was able to hold a little bit more than half the gain. Silver, maybe same thing for silver, but if we're looking at the daily and weekly charts, those suggest that the gold and silver market, they're in correction, and they'll probably continue to correct. And that kind of aligns with what we see in the quarterly charts, because both gold and silver, you can see the quarterly candles, they closed quite a bit off the highs of the quarter. I mean, had they closed near the highs of the quarter, that would have implied that, this is a very strong trend. It can keep going immediately in the next quarter. So that's just one little thing to take into account. But all that aside, I mean, the real biggest observation is gold did clear 1900 on a quarterly basis. So there's a lot of nuance here. And, back to silver, what is it going to take for silver to close above 27.50? Maybe that's not going to happen until gold breaks out and goes above 2100. And the other thing, looking at the silver quarterly chart, the major quarterly resistance is at $35, $37. So if you get a quarterly close in silver at $38, $39, I mean, that's telling you silver is going to go to 50, and it could break it on that move, depending on how soon it happens. And so, quarterly and monthly charts, I mean, especially quarterly, but I mean, they're important because financial statements are done on a quarterly basis. I mean, hedge fund, mutual fund, all this big money, their books close every quarter. I mean, some of them might close every month. I'm not sure about that, but, they close every quarter. And so that's a signal that the bulls or bears, the bulls in this case, they want to show that they own gold. They want to, I don't know if they're deceiving people and they just bought it at the last, couple weeks at the end of the quarter, whatever. But I mean, nevertheless, I mean, that's why quarterly and monthly closes are important. But as I said, the shorter term trend is still a correction. If we're looking at the monthly charts, and we can see here for gold, not the best candle. I mean, gold did break above 1900, closed above 1900, closed above 1920 on a monthly basis. That's great. But if you look at that candle, it failed to hold a lot of the gains from earlier this month. And so that implies that it's unlikely gold is going to have a very strong month next month. I could be wrong. That's just the general implication from that candle. But again, it did close above 1900. That's good. With respect to long-term charts, now that 1900 has been broken, it looks like the next key resistance is going to be the monthly. On the monthly chart here, I mean, if you look at those 3 months in 2020 where it touched, I want to say 1985 or 1990. So that's and I drew that line there, that little red line at the top. So that's where the resistance is on a long-term basis on a monthly chart. So let's just round up and say 2000 on the monthly chart. So if we get a monthly close above 2000 this month or next month or whenever, that's going to be a signal that gold, I mean, we already have the quarterly close at a new all-time high. So you get a monthly close at a new all-time high above 2000. That's going to signal that the daily and weekly closes are going to follow probably very soon at that point. So that's the next key level to look for. Silver, I mean, the monthly chart, like the quarterly, I mean, it shows a significant resistance at 27.28. So on the monthly chart, I mean, it's really, you could say it's the resistances from 27.5 up to 28.5. I believe the 28.5 is the highest monthly close for silver. So, I mean, this is pretty stiff resistance for silver, and that's the difference between the two, is that gold really has limited overhead resistance. And so I see gold closing above, I see it taking out 2100 before silver can take out 27.28. Now, eventually, we see gold's trading above 2100. Then at that point, I think silver will be ripe to finally surpass that 27.28 resistance. But for here and now, we can see that, at least in the short term, that's a really big ask for silver. It's less of an ask for gold to break 2100. I mean, I think it's going to take a little bit of time. Fortunately, the stocks are really outperforming. They're holding up really well, so that's a good sign. But circling back to silver, I mean, you can see it traded all the way up really close to 27.50 this month, and it closed all the way down. It did in the low 25. So it gave back a lot of the gain, but it was able to close above initial monthly resistance at 24. So that's where we are. I mean, the real significance of today is you got that quarterly close in gold well above 1900 and 1920. So that's a really good sign. But it doesn't change the fact that in the short term, it looks like the metals are correcting. But, I mean, the correction, we'll continue to monitor that. But that correction, in my opinion, is going to lead to some potentially spectacular moves later in the year. And the quarterly all-time high for gold, that's just one hint of what's coming. Let me know what you think. Leave a comment below. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. You can follow all my work here on the channel and also at TheDailyGold.com. Thank you, and I'll see you guys again in the next video.